So today was going great, and then first of all, I started filming, and this happened to my mug, which, like, is fine. I was sitting in on, like, the ledge on my bed that, like, okay, not the ledge, the thing that holds up the bed, and, like, the width of that is only a little bit bigger than this, but for some reason I thought it would be fine. And it wasn't fine, and so this happened, and now when I hold my mug, I'm, like, afraid that my hand's gonna slide down and drop it. I mean, it looks pretty cool, like, I don't really have a problem with it, but I don't want, tea to go everywhere and this to break even worse, so, and I just cut myself on the end of it. That's fantastic. That's what you want. But the good news here is I finally can report to you that I found an album I genuinely care about enough to come back to after this review is over. Yeah, this and JPEG Mafia are the only two so far of 2018 that have really done this to me, but I'm so happy that I finally got another project that has replay value, because not that I don't enjoy, the other projects that I review, I still care about them, but it's just that I know deep down that, like, projects like this really are the shit to me personally, and it's just a nice feeling to be able to talk about why you love an album so much rather than why you don't like an album. And I'm sure that that's obvious, but with the amount of times that I try to listen to albums before I review them, it is really nice to have a project that I probably would want to be listening to that much anyway. Megan Remy fronts US Girls. She has released a myriad of projects under this name in the past 10 years. To my understanding, they're more influenced by lo-fi indie and art pop. But with this album and A Poem Unlimited, there are so many different sonic influences. I mean, it's primarily art pop and neo-psychedelia, but we're getting hints of disco and dance music, funk, we're getting some synthwave and some dream pop. There really are so many different ideas packed into every single one of these songs. I mean, it is kind of a mixed bag, and it's pretty varied in the amount of sounds it tries to pull off, but it's so cohesive and it all comes together so well. The production on this album is just so lavish and layered and detailed, and the mixing is nearly flawless. It kind of blows my mind how some of these elements were worked in, like the distorted guitars near the end of Velvet for Sale, or even the kind of hip-hop influence beat in the beginning of Poem. It's like, I don't know how this works, but it sounds so right. And I can't really give Megan Remy's vocals much except praise. I mean, I think that she's an extremely strong vocalist, and she has such range, and she kind of carries the weight of these songs so effectively. And this album's lyrics only add to its sophistication. I mean, we're getting an overarching theme of feminism, and it keeps coming back in a bunch of songs, but also we're getting some kind of different angles, like we're getting hints of a failed relationship on L Over, we're getting criticism of Obama's presidency on Mad as Hell or MAH, and we're even getting criticism of our current capitalist economic system on songs like Poem. So while political and social issues are definitely coming up time and time again on this album, it's not to the point where it feels overwhelming. They're definitely sprinkled in tastefully, and these album's lyrics kind of can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Singling out highlights in this album is a little bit difficult for me, because for the most part I feel like every single song in this album kind of brings something to the table that's worth talking about, but for the sake of this review not being like 20-30 minutes long, I will try to narrow it down. Velvet for Sale definitely stands out. We're looking at some atmospheric, like, whispering vocals, native drumming, a killer bass line, and these layers of synths that just create this beautiful atmosphere. And like I did mention earlier, the distorted guitars that come in at the end of this track just sound so good in their context. Another great song is Rage of Plastics. Honestly, I love the horns in the beginning of this track, the steady pianos, and the funky bass line is just so catchy. And the very punchy and disco-inspired groove that is Mad as Hell is amazing. The chorus on this song is pretty infectious. It's hard not to see this track as a highlight on the album. Rosebud is another beautiful, kind of soft song. It starts with these strings. It's definitely a more low-key track on the album, but I really do enjoy the dark, kind of open to interpretation lyrics. I can't really tell what they're about, but they definitely are very appealing and compelling. I also really enjoy the lyrics on L Over, that line where she's like, "Can you imagine trying to get satisfaction out of a stone? One would have to wait their whole life, and I resent you for that." Seems to be about some sort of failed relationship or some situation where someone she loved didn't treat her right. I really do like these cynical undertones when it comes to love and relationships. For me, Poem is definitely a highlight too. I friggin' love this bouncing synth line. Also, the vocal filters on this track sound perfect in their context, and I think that the melody of this track is extremely strong, and the lyrics seem to be a criticism of capitalism, like where she says, imagine a world where no one needs to make a profit and no one needs to get paid. And time is another easy highlight here. I mean, this is just such a myriad of sounds at once. It feels pretty disco influenced, but we're getting layers of horns and this killer bass line and synths. It's so punchy, and I really enjoyed the kind of vague, simplistic lyrics to this song as well, and it definitely feels very engaging. It's like a 7-minute party. It's just a total blast of a song, and honestly, looking at this record as a whole, I really enjoy it. It might be my album of the year so far. I mean, there aren't very many areas that I could say this didn't really need to be here. Although, for some reason, Incidental Boogie didn't really hit me as hard as it hit some other people. I don't know, it just didn't really bring much new to the table that I feel is worth talking about. But for the most part, I think this album does what it sets out to do very effectively. So I'm going to go ahead and give this album an 8.5 out of 10. Coming soon, I'm going to talk about the new Kira Kira Bonito EP. I'm going to do a singles update on Tuesday, and then I'm going to talk about Car Seat Headrest's reworking of Twin Fantasy. And past that, maybe I'll do a review of the new Black Milk. Yeah, and then it's all up in the air from there. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please make sure you subscribe. It would mean everything to me. And yeah, I will see you next time.